Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone, to our YouTube webinar, Business in the Trenches with COVID-19. It's good to have you. This is the third of a series of webinars that are designed to help small and mid-sized business owners. We're here offering help on issues and actions that you can take to manage and optimize their businesses during this worldwide crisis. So our first session, as we got started, is available right now on YouTube at the B2B Solutions Group that's been focused on strategy and financial considerations. That was our first that we did in this three-part series. Our second session, that's also available online, focused on operations. Now, today's session, we're going to shed some light on sales and marketing. So we're going to try to help you deal with some steps that you can take to manage your workforce's productivity, as well as deal with working from home. Now, remember, we're live. So I'm going to ask if you could share this link with others whom you feel might benefit, business owners that might want to ask some questions. We're going to be fielding those as well. But we just ask you to just click on the link below, share this with anybody you know who might want to benefit from this type of content today. By way of introduction, my name is Jason Messier. I am the president of a national recruitment advertising agency that does two things. We help companies craft and write recruiting messages to help them support their recruitment efforts. And then secondly, we also help them facilitate the flow of those resumes through recruitment process outsourcing. And it's my privilege today to be your moderator on today's event. I've got a phenomenal panel of great talented business owners today. And we've got a number of questions that are also related to marketing and sales that were given in advance. And those were those who pre-registered for this webinar today. They have already submitted those, so we have queued those up to be able to be answered today. But if you have questions, simply click on the link below, and that's a place where you can know that your questions will be fielded, and we're going to try to get to those a little bit later on. So our panelists today are friends of mine, and they come from a variety of backgrounds. They represent a wealth of knowledge, again, as I mentioned, in sales and marketing. You can access, by the way, their immediate contact information by going to our website, b2bsolutionsgroup.net. That's also going to be linked in the comments below. But with no further ado, let's meet our panelists. We'll bring them in and we'll get right to the subject at hand. First, out of the gate, I've got David Zimmerman. He is the owner of Reliable Acorn. Now, David has over 12 years of experience using internet marketing to help business-to-business companies get found by their customers. I've seen his work, and he's at the top of his game. David, it's good to have you. And along with David, I've got Rachel Green. She's a partner and head of sales and marketing at Green Solutions. She's an expert at brand management, a social media expert. She works with not only brand management consulting, but also works with sales and marketing in several industries. I also welcome Chad Cutno. He's with Piedmont Prospecting. Chad had over 2 decades of sales experience across media and software and a series of training verticals. He is also Sandler certified as a bronze certified instructor. It's good to have Chad. And then he's going to be representing our sales side of things along with Doug Havis, who's the founder and president of Pinnacle Sales Advisors. It's good to have Doug with 30 years of experience in sales and leadership roles with companies and startups and small businesses. It's really good to have this excellent panel with us today. So thanks to all of you for being here today. Really good to have you. All right, we're going to get straight to these questions. I've got them right here, and I'm excited to start first and foremost with David Zimmerman. All right, look at that smile. I love it. David, we're going to get straight into it. There's a number of companies, David, that have taken a big financial hit during this pandemic. Nevertheless, they need some marketing to get new busineses's. Any thoughts on that? Particularly when funds are like tight, what would you say the most cost-effective way is to promote a business?
I think it's a good question. I struggle to kind of give one thing that would help every business, but I think if there's one thing I could do for almost everybody, it would be to produce more content. Content's one of those things that everybody knows they need to do, but never seems to find the time to do it. And well, now that a lot of us have more time than money, it's the time to spend on content.
If you say content though, what should companies write about?
Yeah, that's the struggle most companies have. What are we supposed to talk about? And I think the answer is really pretty simple. A lot of your customers have questions and they ask them all the time. Now is the time to take an account of those questions your customers commonly ask you. Go ahead and write down the answers. You as an expert probably know what people already want to know about your business. Take the time to write that down. If your employees have a little extra time on their hands, tap them. Ask them, hey, what are some common questions people are always asking you? Ask them to write down the answers they give. Now you've got a ton of content that is really relevant for your potential customers.
All right, so you got all this content, right? What do you do with the content? How do you work it?
Yeah, I really focus on web marketing, especially search marketing. And what I find is that time and time again, whenever my clients are adding new, unique, relevant content to their websites, Google rewards them with new visitors who are likely to become customers because they're able to be found by the people looking for, well, in this case, the questions that someone's answering. Now, of course, you can't just publish something on your website, sit back and hope Google sends you your customers. You kind of need to promote it too. And that's where, listen, something as simple as email can be very useful. Email isn't very glamorous. Sometimes it kind of gets overlooked, but it's one of those really effective marketing channels. You got an email list. They probably have questions that you have the answers to. Share your answers with them. If you don't have an email list, that's okay. I bet you your sales team gets really tired of answering the same questions over and over again. They can simply maybe streamline their sales process by forwarding on the answers to the questions, which is a great way to kind of turn a potential lead into a customer.
That's some great marketing ideas there. I want to pivot real quickly over to Rachel. Thank you, David, for that. I appreciate that. Rachel, thanks for being with us today.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
Hey, Rachel, I've got a question here. What are some things that you would advise to a small, mid-sized business owner that's questioning whether they should pivot their business? Help me with that.
Yeah. That's a great question. I have definitely seen a lot of businesses throughout my career that have made decisions based off of fear and emotion. And it's very important right now that there's a lot of businesses that are making decisions due to some information that they're hearing, as opposed to, first, I would recommend to not panic. So Definitely don't make decisions off of emotion, and take into consideration that you might just be directing your message at the wrong space. So since all of this has happened, there are different habits that people are forming, but their needs are still the same. So figure out where they are spending the most of their time, and we can discuss some possible channels as well that are geared towards your demographic that you might not be accessing, and wasting your time either pivoting too far or just losing sight of based off of emotion. So another thing too is if you do really need to pivot, like there are a lot of restaurants and bars, which is a huge demographic that I serve, that have had to pivot tremendously because they can't have not only 100% capacity once everything gets back to normal, but they're having to do a lot of to-go orders. So they're structuring their business and their staffing entirely differently. So I would recommend to definitely take a lot of their business online and try to encourage and incentivize their existing happy customers to offer referrals and to post on their social media the great service and products that they have.
That's excellent. Now, so if I have to pivot, don't panic. And so then I'm going to ask, how can you use social media to develop or redefine your marketing message in order to generate these leads? Maybe when I do panic, pivot.
Yeah. So if you do need to pivot and adjust your marketing message, it's kind of questionable on how you should do it. So David brought up some really important things, is to ask people that you know, ask people that are already in your network, that are already really devoted to your product or service, and see what questions they have. And that's how you can develop your marketing strategy. Another thing to take into consideration is that social media is a networking platform. It was originally made for social and personal uses, but now it's used for a lot of professional purposes, especially for B2B on LinkedIn. It's super important to utilize. So take it, it's, you can address it in the same way that you would networking groups for the first time. So you go, it's a little awkward. You know, gauge a couple of people, you start a couple of conversations, you ask a couple of questions about what people do. You can ask your network those same questions. And by the end of a couple of conversations, you probably have some people that are interested enough to hear more. And that's how you start warming up those leads to generate sales. Another thing too is to utilize your local business directory, such as in Charlotte, if you were to utilize the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, to sift through and find the businesses that you want to target, and then go on LinkedIn and find the executives and the titles that you're trying to target to. And that's how you can start warming up those conversations.
I can't help but think that there are people listening right now who are asking questions about marketing, social media, and we're probably beginning coming back to you and David as well on this topic. I want to pivot real quickly over to Doug, because we're also talking about sales today. Doug, thank you again, Rachel. Doug, a couple questions for you. Doug Havas, tell me this. How do I deal with sales compensation plans given my business and revenues have been impacted?
Yes, compensation plans, one of my favorite topics. So as far as compensation plans in today's environment, I guess a couple basic questions that people need to ask, which is, one is, just how severely impacted has my business, how impacted has it been? And then obviously you have to look at affordability. So as far as compensation plans in today's environment, I would say there's probably several different options that you might want to consider. Again, depending on how badly impacted and what your affordability is. But one thing you can do is, push your quotas out for your salespeople. So let's say they have $1 million sales quota for the fiscal year. And here in partly of Q1 and certainly in Q2, you've been severely impacted. What you could do is take that 250,000 in Q2 and push it into Q3 and Q4, or all into Q4, kind of depending on the seasonality of your business. That allows your salespeople to still be able to make the same amount of money. It still drives the bottom line or the top line for your company. So that's certainly one thing you can do, is just push quotas out. On top of that, you can also do a series of draws to help, because salespeople are concerned about their cash flow, right? So one of the things that I would take a look at would be doing like a recoverable draw during the time they have no quota. So basically pay them as if they're achieving 75 to 80% of their goal. That maintains their cash flow, keeps them motivated, keeps them engaged, and then allows them to make their commissions later on, and then they repay that draw back as they earn commissions. And if you really want to be generous, you could certainly do a non-recoverable draw, which is the same kind of arrangement, but they don't necessarily have to pay the draw back, becomes forgivable. I prefer the recoverable draw because it makes them feel more accountable. It's a little bit less risk to you as a company. So I would try to go that way if you can. Another alternative, if your business has been really, really impacted and you don't think you're going to be able to recover during that fiscal year, you could put your salespeople on a compensation plan that basically pays on MBOs, or management by objectives, or SKOs, sales key objectives. So that's another way of doing it. So pull commissions out of it completely, and then set them up on these MBOs or these SKOs. But when you set up the MBOs, make sure that they are specific deliverables that you as a company have value for. It drives the right behavior, et cetera, and drives the right deliverables that, again, is a benefit to your company. So look, in the end, around compensation plans, I just remember, comp plans are there to help drive very specific behavior and set very specific behavior, and make sure that whatever you set up as compensation plans, make sure that they're aligned to the results and the goals and objectives that you have as a company. That's the key thing.
That's good feedback. I got another question, sales related. Just came into us. It looks like it's written from maybe a sales manager. He's asking, my sales reps aren't as busy as they used to be and won't be for a while. Should I lay them off, or can I keep them engaged and motivated until things come back to normal? What are your thoughts, Doug?
Yeah, that's a tough question for everybody. So again, I'll say it goes back to affordability, right? But if there's any way you can afford to keep your sales organization, I would say by all means do it. Because look, I think the last thing you want to do is sort of crawl up into a fetal position and just go away until this thing is all over. That's not a good approach. I think you want to lean into it. You want to be communicating with your customers, and you want to keep your sales force engaged. Look, I've got one client where we sat and kind of considered, what do we do here? Because their business was pretty severely impacted and it was somewhat seasonal in nature. But what we did is we decided, you know what, we're going to be very aggressive and we're going to go after our customers, make sure they know that we're here to serve them, add value to them during this period. So the sales team stayed very, very active, communicated more with their customers than they ever had been before. And lo and behold, we found out that our top competitor in that space had done exactly the opposite, which is they basically stayed at home, went into that fetal position, said, we're just going to wait this out until it's all over. So in the end, we ended up getting much, much greater market share because our competitors decide to basically furlough their salespeople and take it easy for a while. So look, I would say if you can afford it, be aggressive, get out there in front of your customers, communicate to your customers. And as far as engaging your sales team, yeah, they're probably less busy than they were before, but there's a lot of things that you can do to keep your sales force engaged. One of the things you can do is, you can do internal training, get them trained up on your products and services more than they ever had been before. The other thing is I would engage your sales organization in terms of problem solving. I mean, they know your customer base better than anybody. They have a lot of creative ideas, creative solutions. They can help you with problem solving. So engage them in that process. You can also get them on social media. Rachel talked about that a little bit. Get them on LinkedIn, get them to use Sales Navigator. There's a lot of great things you can do to connect with new prospects, existing customers. That's where your customers are. They're online. So meet them where they are, which is online and through social media, email, and phone. So
that's huge feedback. Thanks for that. I'm going to transition also to Chad. Thank you, Doug, for that. Chad, I know you operate also in the sales world. Thank you for being with us today. The question I have for you regarding the sales is, what are some best practices for people to build opportunities in their pipeline during this COVID-19? What are your thoughts?
Sure. Jason, thanks for the question, and welcome everybody to the webinar here. I'm referring back to Rachel touched on some great points as well as Doug. Three things: fear, pivot, and fetal position. Number one, with all the negative psychology coming to us, you see it on TV ads, you just see it in the news. Boy, you better start working on your mindset, number one, and digging into what inspires you and motivates you, and really digging into your personal and professional goals to figure out why you're doing what you're doing and revisit that. If you haven't opened up your goal setting materials, and if you don't have any, I highly recommend taking this time to get your goals set up and finding out why you're doing what you're doing. That is a personal driver to all of us. Seek inspiration, seek motivation. Look, time block on, also time management, blocking out your calendar like it's business as usual, right? Is going to keep you on a track to do the behaviors and activities you need to keep on moving forward. Planning your sales and marketing activities, +1, doing your prospecting, set a certain amount of calls or emails that you're willing to do every day. Keep organized, which is absolutely critical. A lot of people are working a majority of us are working at home right now. We don't have our office desk, and it seems like organization can get a little bit scattered if we're working from our home offices instead of an office, right? So get organized, plan your sales and marketing, time block your calendar from when you wake up until you go to bed, so you have some sort of business normalcy. We're all looking for life normalcy, but also we're looking for business normalcy. Okay. Also reaching back into your old files, right? And go back about a year or two, make a list of the people who you've had very good business conversations with in the past, but they may have just not pulled the trigger on doing business with you for one reason or the other. Go back and check in with them, and see how they're doing. Tell them what you're up to. You'd be surprised at how many opportunities can come from the old opportunities in a file.
Chad, tell me, are people taking meetings right now? What are you finding?
Yes, they're dying to talk to somebody.
Really?
Look, look, we're all held captive here in our current environments, right? People with that being said, you really do have a captive audience. Not only are people, like I said before, wanting normalcy in their lives, or wanting normalcy in their businesses. They are dying to talk about business. A lot of folks are planning, and I've gotten a lot of people on the phones for my clients, and they're willing to have business conversations. I mean, they are dying to talk to people. And that's the biggest piece of head trash that people get in their minds, is that, oh, I'll be bothering them in these trying times and all of that kind of stuff. And with that being said, let me highly, highly recommend, if you're reaching out to people, don't start off with, hey, I know times are tough, or hey, I know everybody's struggling. That automatically sets the conversation into a negative mode. It's business as usual. Just take your business as usual, just like you would every day, but +1, increase your activity, because there's no commute going on. You have an extra 1 or 2 hours a day to have a captive audience, to reach a captive audience and share your prospecting message with them.
Wow, Chad, that's good stuff. Now, I'd like to open it up a little bit, but before I do, I've got one more question for you, Chad, and I think some of my other panelists might want to comment in. I want to remind everybody, this is a live webinar, and if you've got questions, we're watching for those in our chat room right here on our YouTube channel, so don't hesitate to tee up some more questions for us. But this question goes out, start with you, Chad, and I suspect there'll be a few more that might want to pipe up and chime in here. The question is very simply, how do you see the business landscape for the changing for outbound prospecting moving forward? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Post-COVID, possibly.
Yeah.
Look, I think we're all getting used to these video conferences and video calls. I think that's going to become more and more the norm. This is just a speculation on my behalf. It saves people a lot of time, saves people some gas money, but obviously we all like to go out and get outside, get out into the business environment and meet face to face. I know I do. But I think the Zoom is going to make a lot of money in the next few years as a normal way to do business, along with the other platforms like Skype and also Google Hangouts. That's going to become a norm. So if you haven't gotten used to this right here, I'd highly recommend getting used to it. Then also, again, I think the act and the activity of prospecting is going to be there moving forward forever and ever, along with the marketing piece as well. So I don't see any of that changing. I think the way that we communicate via video conference, via phone, and also face-to-face meetings will be altered just a little bit, and we'll see what happens. I'm just kind of looking to a crystal ball right now. I'm kind of throwing stuff at the wall. So,
Doug, are you feeling the same way that Chad's sharing? I mean, is your business model changing up a little bit? And Rachel and David, feel free to chime in. Do you feel that, or is it still business as usual?
No, I wouldn't say it's business as usual for sure. First of all, I mean, I agree with what Chad said about, don't start with the negative, like, oh, woe is me, and gee, I know times are tough. But there is a fine line to walk there. You do need to be more empathetic with your customers, because they are dealing with stuff that they've never had to deal with before. And frankly, they're not really sure how to deal with it. So I do think we have to be empathetic to that. But I agree with Chad. You don't want to start with, oh, wow, boy, stuff's really at the bottom here, isn't it? So just be, be very empathetic with your customers and approach them with that sort of tone. But yeah, it's definitely not business as usual. The way we interact with our customers is very, very different. We have to be more virtual. Hopefully things are going to continue to open up. But we definitely have to realize how to talk to customers in a different way on social media and email and phone. So David, I think you had something to add there.
What are your thoughts, David?
Yeah, I was going to add too, we can't discount the value of inbound marketing here at this point too. More and more people are going to be going to the internet. We know that the internet's disrupted marketing and sales dramatically over the last 10, 20 years. It's going to be completely different. More and more people are going to start their search for products and services on the internet. Now, we can do good marketing, we can get those leads, and then sales is going to need to take over from there. But we can't discount how many more people are going to be shifting in their entire way of focusing from back to more inbound leads.
So is it safe to say, David, that our focus now after this pandemic is all happening should be leaning more towards the marketing efforts of our business or more towards the sales efforts to our business? And if it's sales, I'm hearing, is it inbound versus outbound? Help me with that.
Yeah, why does it have to be one or the other? I mean, can't they all get along? I mean,
Yeah,
inbound,
totally. It has to be a good balance between the sales and marketing. I mean, it's just a ecosystem within an organization. If you're relying on just totally hammering the phones and doing cold calls, welcome back to 1984. Okay, with all the tools and resources out there, such as David's organization and company, there's no reason why you shouldn't be pumping out some content, pumping out an email campaign, and getting your name out there, social media campaign, then following up with a personalized touch, such as the phone call or personalized email. So there is a delicate balance with the inbound marketing. If it was if a company is utilizing that on their own and just want to be keyboard warriors and close business that way via email, sure, it can happen, but it's kind of a cold dividing wall between you and your prospect. If you're just hiding behind a keyboard, people still like to have the human touch of a conversation.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Interesting. Rachel, did you have something as well?
Hi, yeah, I think that it all kind of stems back to being available, right? So setting up these digital marketing practices is being available for your customer and being able to answer questions without you being there. Whereas when you're driving in these leads and converting them, also having this access to Zoom being very available too. Like you don't have to strictly be in one particular location. Someone can be wherever they are and still show up for these appointments. So that's a cool thing about availability, I think. Too.
So tell me, in your business practices, this is to anyone on the panel, can we throw face-to-face meetings out the door post-COVID? Because right now people can't get face-to-face with folks, maybe only through Zoom, or and is that the way it's going to, let's just pretend it all stays the same. So salespeople really have to focus on new and innovative ways to connect and to sell. What are you finding in your businesses, Chad?
I think it depends on your personality. I mean, personally, I like getting face to face with people over a cup of coffee or at their business location, but it all depends on the personality, and what people prefer. They may prefer Zoom meetings from here on out. I have a client who just does Zoom meetings or like that, and he's 10 minutes away from me. So it all depends on your personality and how you like to do business, but it's really good to match your customer or your prospect and how they would like to interact as well.
That's right.
So Doug and David, and I mean, David, are you guys finding the same thing on yours? I mean, your customer base who you interact with, are they open to not meeting face to face for those?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, there's nothing more sad than a successful marketing campaign where the company can't close the deal, right? You can have the most successful campaign ever. And if your sales team or you yourself as the sales CEO slash bookkeeper slash everything person, you know, you need sales help and you need to be able to close that deal. So you can't just rely on sales or just marketing. You kind of have to be work together. And the better you're doing it, making that connection between the two, the more successful I think you'll find your business is.
That's good. Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, no, to me, I think it's you meet the customer where they are, right? So, kind of back to what Chad said, if the customer doesn't allow you on campus, doesn't allow you into their offices, then obviously that's not an option. There are some customers who are allowing you to come in on site as long as you participate in the mandated physical social distancing, et cetera, et cetera. So, and as far as video conferencing, that's obviously a very valuable tool. I'd much rather talk to somebody via video conference than over a phone or certainly an email. But the other thing I tell people is, use the tool that your customer wants to use. If their standard is Skype, then you use Skype. If their standard is Zoom, then you use Zoom, so on and so forth. Don't force your customer to learn a new video tool or whatever. You learn their tool, not have them learn yours.
That's a good point. Well, listen, in the time that we've been talking about all this, I've been watching my chat window. And again, YouTube out there, if you've got questions for our panelists, please send us those questions. I've got 3 questions that have come in right off the bat here, and I want to get right to them. From one of our audience members, Rachel, this question is directed to Rachel and Doug. Rachel mentioned the pivoting idea, and this goes back to the face-to-face meetings, but I have account executives that are very hands-on. They do dinners, they invite them to sporting events, and they meet them in golf courses and participate in a lot of folks at expos. How do I adjust? Any thoughts, Rachel and Doug? Rachel, go ahead.
Rachel.
Yeah, so especially if you are dealing with people that are in your city, golf courses are still open, and you can be on separate golf carts and have a social distance conversation. If that's what works well for you, that does still work. Also, I would recommend you could potentially buy someone like a delivery meal and then do a conversation over Zoom.
That's cool. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, look, again, video conferencing is a great idea. We have a client that's doing webinars with their customers. They're doing lunch and learns. They're doing virtual lunch and learns. They're typically doing it with the customer on site, but now they can't. So what we're doing now is we're doing virtual lunch and learns using video conferencing. But to Rachel's point, one of the things that incented people to come to a lunch and learn was the lunch part, right? They enjoyed the idea of a free lunch. So the salesperson was like, well, I don't know if I can do that because, it's now virtual. I said, sure you can. So he worked with a contact at the customer site, figured out where they normally order food from a deli locally. And they took orders and they pre-ordered sandwiches and distributed them to all the participants, and they were eating their sandwiches while he delivered the lunch and learn virtually. So again, there's a lot of creative things you can do. Again, it's all about, try to make it as normal as you can. But, obviously limited by what we're having to deal with distancing. So just make it as normal as you can to every degree.
Interesting. All right. From the YouTube audience, Bud wants to know what new skill sets do our sales and marketing people need given the economic and health environment going forward? Thoughts? Who wants to say? Go ahead, Chad, take that for us.
Yeah, listen. Have your antenna up in all the conversations that you're having with your prospects and also your customers. We've said in the past few webinars here that checking in with your customers, I know Doug's pressed that button before, check in with your customers, see how they're doing, see how their mindset is. But listening, right? Listening skills right now are incredibly important to gather information rather than give information, because you are trying to calibrate to how your prospects and your customers would like to work. That's my my number one piece of advice right there.
Yeah. So just to add on to that, so yeah, like we've kind of beat this dead horse. I mean, salespeople just have to realize that life is not like it used to be, and whether they're comfortable with it or not, they've got to figure out how to work online. how to work through social media, et cetera, communicate with their customers differently. But aside from that, look, I've worked in the in the startup world a couple times. And then, you know what? A startup company is completely and totally different in terms of skill set, culture, pace, chaos, very different than a mature operating company. And when I think about when this environment continues to open up, business is going to feel a little bit more like a startup than it ever has before, just because of the level of chaos, and you're kind of being shot out of a cannon here. Hopefully you want that to happen, where all of a sudden your business is dealing with things that it hasn't had to deal with. So back to, Bud's question about skill set, I think leadership has to be really honest with themselves in terms of, do they have the understanding and the ability and the skill set, the DNA to manage and lead in a potentially chaotic and startup-like environment when they're used to dealing in a pretty mature, established company environment. So the management team that you have today, probably not the same one you had when you started the company up, if that's where you were, or when you acquired the company. So I just think management teams need to be pretty honest with themselves in terms of, do we have the right people in the right seats? Do we need to shift people around temporarily to make sure that we're bringing the right skill set to the right problem? Because again, when this thing really gets launched, it's going to be a lot more chaotic and probably feel a lot different than it did 2-3 months ago.
That's good stuff. So next question here I've got, thanks for that. Chad, got a question. A lot of salespeople now are not on the road traveling anymore. And the question asks, how do I turn a cold dial, since they're having to make phone calls now? How do I make that cold dial into a warm dial? How do I warm my prospects up?
Sure. A few ideas on that and a few suggestions. First of all, get that marketing going. If you're with one of my clients, he sends out a monthly newsletter. He collects the data on the click-throughs to it, and he sends the list over to me at month's end, where I follow up on those people. So there's already something naturally to talk about to warm up the call. So following up on your marketing efforts and mentioning, hey, I see you click through to our newsletter, or hey, you filled out our survey, or whatever the case may be. Great way to warm up the call. That's if you have the marketing going on. There are times when we just simply have to pick up the phone and call somebody that has no idea that we're going to be calling or who we are. Take 2 to 3 minutes, look on their LinkedIn page, Google their name and their company, look on their company website, try to find some common ground or a personal tidbit that they have listed there, maybe where they went to school, where their hometown is, any kind of common interest that you can interject after that. Hey, this is Chad Cutno with Piedmont Prospecting. Hey, I noticed ... That seems to lower the defense walls just a little bit there as well, doing research on these people and these companies, so you're well informed of who these people may be and what they're doing. You can get Google alerts for certain people for companies on your prospect list, where any kind of news source that features the name of that company or that person is directly emailed to you, so you can keep track of what's happening with their company or that person in the news all over the world. So those are just 3 suggestions. The more well-informed we are, the better the conversation is going to be.
Good thoughts there. Another question just came in for David in marketing. My digital advertising rates are going up. Should I be looking at shifting dollars to other channels like TV, radio, and print? David, Rachel?
Yeah, I've seen rates go up in Google PPC really, really high. And it's because everyone is competing for the same lower amount of leads. And that's really getting very expensive. But I'd encourage my clients, and I'd encourage you too, to make sure and not look at the spend, look at the ROI. Right. If you can sustain your ROI at that higher spend, keep doing it. And I think if you think about your marketing in terms of ROI, you will say that your ROI from television, radio, magazines, print, whatever, is far more expensive if you can even measure it. My personal philosophy is I don't do any marketing I can't measure. Because if
No.
I don't know the ROI, I don't know if it's working to even evaluate where I should go. The worst kind of marketing is where you're not measuring, you're just guessing. So be careful about switching between channels, especially if you can't quantify the ROI on that.
Hmm. That's good. Rachel, I got a question. How do I figure out where my audience is these days? And how can I tell if they've shifted to a new platform? Thoughts on that?
That's a great question. There's a lot of amazing resources out there. I'm sure David can attest to some too, of some actual statistics of where people are spending their time, and also what demographics are growing in different platforms. Like right now, where you can find a lot of your B2B clients is going to be on LinkedIn, because that's where their headspace is at. When they open the platform, they're willing to start that conversation of, okay, what can you offer? What am I going to offer? Like these types of conversations. If you're a B2C, you might be using platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, maybe even Twitter to gauge and figure out where your marketing message is going to be. And how you can tell if they've shifted to a new platform. Start, create a profile, see if you can find your existing contacts and see if they're engaging more on those platforms as well.
That's good stuff. So remember, we're live on YouTube. If you've got questions out there for my panelists, please don't hesitate to let us know what those questions are. I just got another question that came in right here. This was directed at Doug. And the question says, my business is one of the lucky ones. We are perfectly positioned and our salespeople are killing it. How do I fix that comp plan as they're going to max it out, but I need them to keep pushing hard?
Well,
Different scenario.
that's very much of a high class problem to have today.
Isn't
So
it though?
congratulations to whoever that is.
Yeah.
But look, to me, that's a pretty easy one. I enjoy having a situation where how do we figure out how to keep people motivated because they're blowing out their numbers or exceeding their numbers. So look, again, compensation, this goes back to compensation plans. Compensation plans should be designed so that a salesperson is always driven and incented to sell. You should never put them in a situation where they're like, yeah, I'll just push that into next year or next quarter because I can get paid more. You don't ever want that to happen. Again, you are driving behavior. You are driving results that you want to see. So if you have a sales organization that's doing really, really well because your business is doing really, really well in this environment, make sure your comp plan is designed with accelerators. So I always like to have accelerators built in. So once a salesperson gets to 100% of their number, they can continue to earn money, and ideally in an accelerated fashion. So if you're going to pay them 2% on revenue, maybe it goes to 2.5% or 4% once they've reached 100%, because again, you don't want them sandbagging and pushing that business into next year. You want them to, sell it today, close it today. And if they can make even more money, then that's a good thing. And you know what? That's a win-win, right? Because you want that person to drive more revenue, company wins, salesperson wins. Again, comp plan should all be about win-win.
Win-wins. Anybody else? Anybody have thoughts on that? That's good stuff. We want to create win-wins out there. And I like the idea of accelerators. I've seen some clients do that as well. I can't thank you guys enough for being with me today on our YouTube COVID-19, focusing on marketing and sales. You guys have been great. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your expertise. And audience, we thank you for being with us. We're going to continue to bring you content as the weeks move forward, and we want to hear from you. So I would just say, as we create a wrap, thank you to David, Doug, Chad, and Rachel. If you want to connect with our panelists, remember you can do that online at b2bsolutionsgroup.net. That is available for you to click on. A link to that is right here below. And for those of you who registered for our event, and we are thankful to you for submitting so many questions up front that we were able to address, we will be sending you a survey form and ask you please complete that. We appreciate your comments about today's event, and we want to hear from you as to how we can make this YouTube Live even better. So with that said, until then, we hope you and your family are good and healthy and staying strong. And we want to thank you again for being with us. Until then, keep living out loud and on purpose. Have a great day.
Thank you.